As Mory saw those alien figures, he ran away, but slipped and slammed into the ground. Ryder and the others grew worried upon seeing Mory suddenly panicked and terrified. Miria was shocked, and Yahello hadn't expected it at all. As the alien approached Mory, he grabbed his arm and asked if he was okay. Mory, sweating and confused, looked as if he had no idea what was happening. When he turned to his mother, Miria, with a distressed expression, she immediately shouted, demanding they stop. But as the alien tried to touch Mory again, Mory's perspective twisted. He saw them as threatening figures, their presence giving off an ominous atmosphere. Miria continued to shout at them not to touch Mory, but before anyone could react, Mory bit down on the alien's wrist. The alien was completely taken aback, shocked, and demanded to know what Mory was doing, telling him to stop. However, Mory, overwhelmed by fear and distrust, refused to let go. The alien struggled to pry Mory's fangs from his wrist, wincing in pain and demanding he release him. Meanwhile, Miria desperately tried to reach Mory while preparing to cast her black hole ability, but the guards immediately intervened, warning her that using powers there was forbidden. She hesitated, frustration and helplessness washing over her as she watched the scene unfold. Then, suddenly, a streak of blue energy flashed past her, snatching Mory away in an instant. He vanished, leaving Miria and Ryder stunned and terrified. But thankfully, the energy wasn't hostile. It had a calming effect on Mory, making him drowsy. Before anyone could react, Mory was gently placed in the center of the judge's domain. Miria could only watch as the judge took Mory away, stating that he needed to hear an explanation regarding the situation. Outside, as Miria recounted everything to Ryder, he grew furious upon hearing what the judge had decided, calling it nonsense. Miria remained silent for a moment before finally speaking. She explained that the judges believed Mory was extremely unstable and suspected that it might be because of her. Because of this, they had decided to keep Mory within the judge's territory. Ryder, outraged, demanded to know the basis of their claim. However, Miria remained calm, sitting quietly as she replayed the events in her mind. The way Mory bit the alien's hand as they tried to take him, the moment they seized him. Then, a troubling thought crossed her mind. Why was the alien search team inside the judge's chamber in the first place? A few days earlier, the 3 alien judges had expressed their confusion about how a human from Salam territory could have made it all the way to Miria's domain. They questioned how a human child could have possibly traveled such a great distance alone. As Ryder and the others watched, Miria prepared to speak, but before she could, the judges directly confronted her, demanding the truth. They asked if she had wanted the human infant so badly that she had secretly ordered her servant to take him from the shelter. Miria, outraged by the accusation, shouted that she would never do such a thing. She insisted that Mory had left Salam on his own. But the judges were skeptical, doubting that an infant as young as Mory could have crossed the Salam territory boundary alone. In response, Miria explained that she had made clothes for Mory using lauder fabric, and she suspected that was the reason he had been able to cross the border. As the judges listened, they questioned Miria, asking if she had deliberately created the weakened boundary after learning of its vulnerability. She immediately denied it, explaining that she had only read in the records that humans could be weakened by small things. She had given Mory the fabric, hoping he would grow up healthy, not for any other reason. She added that she had grown worried when they hadn't received any updates from the shelter about Mory for months. So, she sent her servant to check on him, only to discover that Mory had disappeared. From that moment, they began tracking him down. She also stated that this was the first time she had heard about the Salam boundary weakening. When the judges asked when Mory had arrived in the city, Miria replied that a traveler had brought him there. The judges then asked where that traveler was now, causing Miria to hesitate before answering that he was no longer in the city. Ryder, who had been silently watching and listening, suspected that Miria was covering him up to protecting him. The judges, however, stated that without the traveler's presence, there was no way to prove her claim. Miria reluctantly agreed. The judges continued, explaining that when Mory arrived at the city center, the traveler had briefly lost sight of him, and in that short moment, Mory was nearly kidnapped after bumping into a citizen. To make matters worse, the traveler had used forbidden force to intervene, an action that could have seriously harmed the human infant. They then asked Miria if she understood what she had done wrong. Miria acknowledged her carelessness and sincerely apologized. Without hesitation, the judges then stated bluntly that, since Mory was human, he did not qualify to stay. They argued that he should have been sent back to human society from the very beginning. They also questioned why a human was even in their territory in the first place. Because of this, they proposed relocating Mory to a restricted zone. Miria immediately protested, pleading with them to consider the emotional toll on the child. She argued that Mory had already been forced to adapt to multiple new environments, and relocating him again would only add to his distress. Even if the restricted zone resembled their current environment, she explained that it was inhabited by humans completely different from those Mory had grown up with. How would he survive there? One of the judges then pointed out that Mory couldn't even communicate properly with humans, claiming that he lacked the intelligence to speak fluently. They asked Miria if she agreed with their assessment. Miria firmly disagreed, explaining that while Mory wasn't completely fluent yet, he could express his emotions clearly. She then pleaded with them to allow her to speak to him. Some of the judges agreed, while others remained skeptical. However, one judge stated that their priority was the happiness and safety of the human child. With that, they decided to end the discussion, saying it was enough for the day and that the meeting was dismissed. As the meeting concluded, Miria remained seated, lost in deep thought. She looked visibly sad, her mind weighed down by everything that had been discussed. As she was about to leave, a sudden voice called out to her. In an instant, she was transported to another dimension. Before her stood the hired judges, and they told her it was an order. Then a familiar figure appeared. Mory. He was waving at her, happily approaching. Seeing him filled Miria with joy, and as Mory ran toward her and jumped into her arms, she instinctively embraced him, holding her little round one tightly. But as time passed, Mory grew older and older. The judges spoke to her again, reminding her that humans do not live as long as they do. They asked her if she could bear to witness the inevitable. Hearing this, Miria became overwhelmed with emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes and streamed down her face as she clutched Mory's tightly, a sadness consuming her. After Miria felt the harsh and sorrowful reality of human life, a week had passed since that moment. Ryder and the others seemed worried about her. As a maid stepped out of Miria's room, the others gathered around, asking if their Madam Miria was okay. Ryder, Annie, and the rest were eager to know as well. The maid simply nodded, but her expression suggested that Miria was not okay. As they discussed what they should do, it was clear to everyone that Miria was deeply troubled. Another maid added that it had been over a week, and Miria had barely been eating. Ryder, concerned, suddenly spoke up, suggesting that perhaps he should address the judges at the next judgment. However, Giles immediately disagreed, saying that it would only make things worse. He further pointed out that Ryder didn't seem to understand why Miria had lied in front of the judges. Giles then explained to Ryder that everyone in the desert knew him as a reckless outlaw. Even though Miria was under suspicion, did Ryder really think the judges would just believe whatever she said? He speculated that the judges would likely assume Ryder was aware that creating beings capable of acquiring knowledge was illegal. If they acted without a proper plan, the alien judges might confiscate Annie. Ryder, hearing this, clenched his fists in anger, barely able to contain himself. But eventually his emotions erupted. He shouted recklessly, demanding how anyone dared to take away what was his. He declared that he was the one who had created Annie. So who had the right to take her? Annie quickly intervened, trying to calm him down, explaining that the others weren't saying it would definitely happen, but that there was a real possibility if they acted rashly. She urged him to stay calm. Realizing his mistake and failure to control his emotions, Ryder stormed out of the room. Annie watched his back as he walked away. As Ryder wandered outside, his thoughts drifted to Mory. Remembering him, a wave of frustration and helplessness washed over him. The lack of security, his inability to protect Mory, and the thought of the judges taking him away filled him with rage. Suddenly, a package arrived. Ryder picked it up at the door, and as he examined it, his eyes widened in shock. Meanwhile, Miria sat in deep thought, immersed in research, her expression carrying loneliness and sadness. But the quiet was shattered by a loud noise, as Ryder burst into the room, slamming the door open. He called out to Miria, informing her that a response had arrived regarding the visitation request he had sent earlier. The judges had granted them permission to see Mory. Miria stood abruptly, stunned by the news. The two discussed the situation for a moment, and soon after, the maids and others began preparing things for Mory. Foods he liked, juice, toys, and cookies. They carefully packed everything before handing it to Miria. She sincerely thanked them. Finally, Miria and Ryder, fully prepared, exchanged a glance. Then, Miria once again approached the stone door. As before, a black door appeared. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and walked in, while Ryder watched her from behind. As Miria entered, two guardians appeared before him, stating that they were her escorts and instructing her to follow them. They walked for a brief moment before stepping out into the dark corridor. As Miria emerged, she looked up and saw massive stone structures floating midair, alongside advanced transport vehicles navigating the space. One of these vehicles took them in. Seated inside, Miria reached into her belongings and pulled out a drawing, Mory's masterpiece, depicting the three of them, Ryder, herself, and Annie, happily bonding together. A warm, bittersweet smile crossed her face as she recalled the moment Mory had drawn it. She reminded herself that she had to be strong. Now, she was finally here. Just ahead, not far from her, Mory lay asleep inside a high-tech incubation chamber. Around him were numerous monitoring devices, and it was clear that those alien bastards were conducting experiments on their beloved Mory. The sight of it made Miria's heart clench. Overcome with emotion, she instinctively stepped forward and demanded an explanation from the guardians. "What are you doing to him? What is going on here?" One of the alien figures turned to her, addressing Mory as Subject 1125. He explained that the child had been refusing meals, so they were forcibly supplying him with nutrients. Miria's eyes widened in shock. "What? Is that true? Why is Mory refusing to eat? And since when?" The alien responded in a detached tone. "He has been like this since the moment he arrived. His cloak was also confiscated for security reasons. Since then, he has exhibited extreme aggression. Not a single member of our staff has escaped being bitten. As a result, physical contact with him has been completely banned to minimize stimulation." Miria clenched her fists as the alien continued. "When Subject 1125 wakes up, you will only be permitted to speak to him from this area. Now, please sign here." She remained silent, her mind momentarily frozen as she stared at Mory's small, fragile form. The alien called her attention again, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Right, I'll sign it," she muttered. Before doing so, she suddenly pulled out a container filled with carefully prepared food. "These are Mory's favorites," she said. "I've already cut them into small pieces, so they can be fed to him one by one. And please, make sure he doesn't drink the juice too quickly." She also handed over Mory's favorite toys, hoping they would bring him comfort. But as she did, painful memories resurfaced. The tragic scene of Mory's lifeless body in her arms flashed before her mind. The weight of it hit her all at once, and she could no longer bear to stand there. With a trembling voice, she whispered, I need a moment." She turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last, unable to face the unbearable barrier in her mind. Just then, Mory stirred. His small, drowsy eyes blinked open, and he saw her retreating figure. "Miria." Despite his weak state, he struggled to move, desperately calling out to her. His tiny voice, though incomplete, echoed in the chamber. Tears welled up in his eyes as he reached out for her. His helpless cries filled the room, and the system blared a warning. The aliens panicked as Mory's distress intensified. To contain the situation, they quickly activated a sedative. Mory, still crying, felt his body weaken. His vision blurred. His small, trembling hands lowered as his strength faded. Then he collapsed onto the cold ground.